Well, hey guys, thanks for joining me. So you saw the title, LIZZO. Now, of course, none of my business. Who am I to, give my opinion or my views? But everybody else does, so I figured why not me too? Plus, I feel like in a way, I kind of got a little bit of qualification um, to comment because I understand what it is to have a small business. And even though her business isn't small, it started out small and it got progressively larger. So, this is my 2 cents. So let's not delay the hate, let's just get right into it. First of all, this warning disclaimer. Again, I am outside on the balcony, so there's bound to be a little background noise. So in advance, I apologize. But I much rather make my videos outside than in the house because I love being outside. You all know that. So, the LIZZO thing. In the last video, I told you the story about my ex-live-in, Leroy, and oh, it stopped. And windows. And I told you that I had gotten a contract and to clean a Super Shoes, and they wanted the windows cleaned also, and my cleaning company didn't offer window cleaning services. And Leroy offered to do it, and at first I said no, and then he kind of convinced me to give him a shot, and went as far as clean my insurance agent's windows, because she had these big floor-to-ceiling windows, and the last time I was there talking to her about stuff, they were kind of dirty. So he went and cleaned those for free, and he did a pretty good job. So we came up with a name for his business and made it a subsidiary to my business, which means he was also under my company's liability insurance umbrella. And then he got there, and he got almost 3/4 of the way through, and it was hot. I mean, no doubt it was hot. And he decided that it was so hot, and he just wasn't sure he was going to be able to do it. And well, let's just say I got ignorant. Now, I'm sure some of you probably remember me telling you that he was probably the love of my life. And we probably broke up about a year after that incident. And that was probably the turning point in our relationship, because before that incident, I had never had any reason to speak to him in that manner. I spoke to him almost like he was a child, but he had never acted in that way, in a way that would affect me before. As a matter of fact, he was very instrumental in helping me take my business to the second level. That's why I started getting contracts like Super Shoes, because he thought about the long term, and he was more computer and internet savvy than I was. He was the one that suggested I make a website, and from that moment on, the business just did, and the business was doing great. Just the old-fashioned way, where you advertise in the newspaper, magazines, and then you send out brochures. The business was already doing really well, but doing the website really took it to another level. So I'm sure some of you probably wondered, because I actually had this conversation with myself. Do I regret that conversation or the way I handled things with him? I regret that I didn't stick to my original no. I think the fact that he actually became an employee of mine was the thing that ruined the relationship. Because at that point, one, I couldn't treat him any different from any other employee, and in actuality, I also felt I had permission to treat him worse than I would treat any other employee, because the conversation I had with him, and if you want to know that conversation, going to have to go look at the last video I posted, I would have never had that conversation with a regular employee. But I did have it with him because I felt like, I don't know, I guess because we were in a relationship. Do I regret saying those things to him? No, I don't. Because that is what I had to do to preserve my reputation and my livelihood. It wouldn't have mattered whether it was Leroy, my sister, my daughter, or anybody. If it was anybody close to me, I would have gone off on them like that, because they, of all people, should have known. For you to decide that you cannot finish this job, what it would have done to my reputation and my livelihood. Now, if it was a basic employee, well, first of all, I would have only hired a professional, so I know nothing like that would have happened. But I didn't. I hired a non-professional, strictly because we were in a relationship. And that was where I made the mistake. But as far as talking to him as though he was a child, well, he had that coming. There's no other way I could have handled it. There's no other way. Because now he put me at risk. And I could not allow that. Now, he could have just said, screw it, I'm out of here. And you know what? I would have had to take a loss. I would have had to, I don't know what I would have done. So I appreciate him not doing that. But from that moment on, he was looking for a way out the relationship because he never forgave me for that. So I guess I just wanted to tell you that. Real quick, before we get into LIZZO, I wanted to make clarification. So after that incident between Leroy and I, within a couple of months, he actually got enough money together to get his own insurance, get his own license, and he became a standalone business. And I allowed him to keep the name that we had kind of come up for, so he could do that window job under my company. And he actually did really well. He was actually doing very well. He got a really big contract. You know, his name was getting out there. He wasn't at a place where he could quit his full-time job. Because when you do windows, most people only get windows done once a month, once every 2 months. So it was going to be a minute. Wait a minute, my phone's beeping. It was going to be a minute before he had enough signed contracts with people to get their windows done on a monthly basis that he could actually give up his regular job. Whereas for me, the cleaning clients I had, I mean, if I had a commercial client, sometimes they wanted service twice a week. If I had a residential client, sometimes they wanted service every week or every 2 weeks. So it didn't take me long to be able to give up my part-time job while I was getting the business built back up, to be able to walk away from the part-time job and have enough money coming in to still support whatever financial obligations I had. Now, when we broke up, we did it in a professional way, because at this point I had just gotten a huge contract and he had gotten a huge contract. We didn't want to get petty. There was no stuff on Facebook, you know, back and forth. It just nothing. And that's the thing I tell my daughter today. Now that you have a business, all the petty stuff got to stop, because nobody wants to hire someone involved in pettiness. So that's one of the first things you have to do. You got to cut out the pettiness. So we broke up. And then a month after he left, we found out he had cancer. Now, in my heart, I had hoped that we could work things out. But I really wasn't, you know, trying to do this 100% because I'm busy. And there's an old rock song that goes, I know we got problems, I know we need to talk about it, and babe, we will, just not right now. And that's exactly how I know I felt at the time. And then 4 or 5 months later, he died. So I wanted to, you know, put that in there so you had the full story. Okay. Now, as far as LIZZO, when you have a small business, it's just you and your crew, you almost feel like family. But if that business grows to a point where you're not even doing the individual hiring anymore, with my employees, I did all the hiring, all the interviewing, all the background checks. And the one question I always ask myself, after looking at everything about this person, would I trust them in my house? Because you know I owned a professional cleaning service. And that was where I made my decision. Would you trust them in your home? And you weren't there. And it didn't matter what they looked like on paper. I also had to feel like I had to feel like that they were putting off an aura that they could be trusted. And it doesn't matter how much experience they had or what they looked like on paper. If there was something about them that, and my answer was no, I don't think I would trust them in my house unsupervised, then I wouldn't hire them. Now, when you're a big company, you have to have a better reason than that for not hiring somebody, or they could sue you. But when you're a small company, you can still do that. And I feel like being able to use that question as the last defense of whether I would hire somebody or not was only going to make my customers feel more secure. I looked at all the allegations that that the three defendants have against LIZZO, and some of them I think aren't going to fly, but I think some of them might. The thing about checking their weight, yeah, I think she had a right to do that. Now, did she do it in a mean way? But you know, I've looked at LIZZO's background dancers, and yes, they're big girls, but they're actually better proportioned than she is. They're actually, I mean, in my personal opinion, just from visual, they're really attractive. I don't necessarily consider LIZZO attractive based on some of the clothes she wears. Some of the clothes she wears look really great on her, and some of them you're thinking, did somebody not tell her that's not a good look? Sort of like that, oh my God, that dress she wore to the Lakers game. What in the world was she thinking? But as far as having standards to what your employees need to meet, you know, for years, models got weighed. Airlines stewardesses got weighed. Now you may say, well, we don't do that no more because that's not fair. Okay, no, we don't, because there was a lot of pressure on people not to do that. But I know even in my own business, there were certain people I knew that weren't going to be able to do the job that I needed them to do based on circumstances. Like Amazon. Amazon will hire anybody. You can come in there on crutches, you can come in there in a wheelchair, you can come in there any way you want to, as long as you can do the job to the standards that they set forth. I think that's fair. Now, if LIZZO decided she needed her background singers to look a certain way, or dancers to look a certain way, then I think that that was her right. And these people were independent contractors. You know, that means if you're not happy with the job, with you know where you are, and then that usually means you can go. Now, as an independent contractor, I never sign contracts. I never ask my my customers to sign contracts. Which is why I could not sell my business when I could no longer do it. Because I mean, when you sell a business and you say, here are my customers, they have to be kind of roped in some kind of way. You can't, I mean, you can sell someone your customer list, but I think only a fool buys a customer list. I wouldn't buy a list unless they were customers roped into a contract. I never ask my clients to sign contracts because if I decided there was a problem and I didn't want to work for them anymore, I wanted to be able to walk away. So that means I had to give them the same option. But I can tell you this, most of my clients stay clients anywhere from 5 to 15 years. So obviously I was doing something right and they were doing something right on their end as well. I think that if you are a virgin and a Christian, then you do not take a job with somebody like Lizzo. Everybody knows she can be on the raunchy side. Why would you take a job with her and then be offended by what you saw? Or things that were, presented to you? That doesn't make sense to me. I think the Amsterdam trip, I think that she might be held liable for that, because the only thing that the courts would have to go on was, did she make you feel like if you didn't participate that you wouldn't keep your job? You know what? People feel like a whole lot of things. Now, unless she actually said, if you don't go, you might lose your job, which I'm sure she was smart enough not to say. But we don't know how she said it and what inclination or what she inferred when she said it. That was just not a good idea, period. It might have been fine when it was just 15 of y'all and you were getting started. But when you got hundreds of people on your payroll, well, now you have to understand there are so many different personalities, and you're not even the person personally interviewing and hiring. You're not really sure where their mindset is. That is something that they should have never done. So I see there might be a problem there. As far as the fat shaming, I don't know what was said. As far as the dance instructor who was trying to push her Christian values on folk, well, that just sounds like a joke to me. Based on some of the other things she did and said, I mean, that just sounds like it was a joke. I just don't even think they're going to look at that. And quite frankly, considering that woman's actions were all over the place, I'm even surprised that this one person, she felt like Christianity was being pushed on her. I just can't even believe she took that person seriously. So that's just my opinion. I mean, of course, there are lots of other things that were said, and those aren't the things I address. These are the things I address. But these are the things I would look at. If I was Lizzo, I would settle out of court, and I would change the way I do business. Those people who work for you now are not your friends. They are employees, and you need to treat them as such. And you probably need to hire a really good HR person. And she also needs to realize that yes, this is her company, and yes, she signs the checks, but the bigger you get, the more you leave yourself out there for criticism. And maybe it's time she rethinks some of her behaviors. That is what I would do if I was in her position. I would relook at things. And I would realize this is no longer just a family, small family of us. This is a company, and now we got to do company things. So that's how I feel. Tell me what you think. But you know how I feel. I'm okay. Ka-ching, ka-ching. Take care, stay blessed, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.